Hi everyone, welcome to All Things Iceland, the place to get the inside scoop on Icelandic nature, history, culture, and language. My name is Jules, and today I'm in downtown Reykjavik. Behind me is the iconic and beautiful Hallgrímskirkja church, but I'm not here to do a tour of downtown Reykjavik. I will be doing that in the very near future, but I'm in this area because I'm going to a specific place in order to talk about the Icelandic sweater, also known as lopapeysa in Icelandic. And I specifically came down here because there's a shop that I go to that everyone, whenever they ask me, I always recommend them to go to this one place. And in this video, I'm going to be going over the history, a brief history of the Icelandic sweater, as well as what makes this sweater unique in comparison to all the other sweaters in the world, and specifically why I chose the shop that I'm going to today, which is only a few blocks from here. So let's head over there now. Hey everyone, so we're in the shop, which is the Hand Knitting Association of Iceland, and I'm with the lovely Helga Dögg, who is actually a part of the association for this shop. And she's a lovely person who's helping me as I go throughout the video. I will be trying on different sweaters for each segment. So thank you very much, Helga. And yes, it would be lovely to hear a little bit about the association if you'd like to share that.
Okay, about this, this Hand Knitted Association is since 1977, started there. It was a few women who started to have it, organize it, to have it together. And today we are around 500 members, wow. About 300, 350 who is activity, always knitting for us.
Okay.
So it's like, we have like people working who tells us what we should make. What size, what kind of pattern, yeah, what kind of lopa, and everything.
Yeah,
so,
and you're all local people.
All local. We are all, it's all around Iceland. And we even have, I think, 2 or 3 men who knit for us.
Okay,
yeah.
Nice.
So it's like, yes, it's all around Iceland, and yeah.
Great, thank you. And later on, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the association. Of course, just the fact that it's local handmade makes it, in my opinion, the best place to come. But I'm gonna give more information later on in the video as to why it's even more my favorite place. So thank you very much, Helga, and we're just gonna jump into the history of the Icelandic lopapeysa.
Yeah, thank you.
So regarding the history of the lopapeysa in Iceland, which in Icelandic, the word lopapeysa, if you break it up, lope means unspun wool and peysa means sweater. So literally it explains that the sweater itself is made from unspun wool. And what's awesome about the history is that knitting came to Iceland in the early 1600s, but it didn't actually kind of like take off until much later, meaning like later in the 1600s, everybody in Iceland, for the most part, who were working, at least a lot of the women were working to support their families with knitting, but not necessarily making the sweaters that you see today. Those did not come into fashion until the mid-20th century, which is hard to believe that it's so much later on, but the inspiration, at least according to some sources, for the sweater have potentially come from the women in Greenland, their national costumes, which are very colorful and beautiful and interesting prints, as well as some other Nordic countries who had developed some other interesting patterns for their sweaters. After Iceland became independent from Denmark in 1944, there was a huge surge in a feeling of nationalism, which of course makes sense. I mean, the country has finally gotten its independence, and the lopapeysa really became a popular sign of this nationalism, this identity of Iceland that people were so proud of. So after the 2008 crash, there was also this nostalgia in the country for simpler times, and the lopapeysa was one of those items that gave people kind of this feeling of when things were simpler, when they were not in kind of such harsh conditions when economically, and so there was a surge in national pride a little after, not directly right after the 2008 crash, but still people were starting to buy more of these sweaters or make more of these sweaters in the country. After the volcano eruption of Eyjafjallajökull, when tourists started to come to Iceland, you saw, of course, another surge in these sweaters because everyone was asking, what is it that I could get from Iceland that would be an amazing souvenir? And tour guides, people who live here would all say, get a lopapeysa. It's so unique, they're so beautiful, and also they last a really long time. So this would be a great gift for you or one of your loved ones. And so the popularity of these sweaters has definitely grown a lot over the last decade. And for the next segment of this video, I'm gonna go into that, but first, I'm gonna change my sweater. Okay, so now I'm in a new lopapeysa, which is so cute. I love this because it's blue and I love the color blue, so this might have to come home with me. But in terms of what makes the Icelandic lopapeysa so unique, we have to start first with the materials. So the wool that makes up this sweater comes from Icelandic sheep. And Icelandic sheep came to Iceland in the 9th and 10th century with settlers that were coming to the country. So they've been in isolation for more than 1,000 years. And every summer they have the ultimate vacation, which they get to like go out and roam all around the country. And I actually have a video that I talked about specifically what makes, you know, Icelandic sheep so unique. So you can check that out if you want in the description box. And in regards to their type of wool, because they're exposed to Icelandic elements all summer, like the wind, the rain, sometimes it can snow in different parts, wherever they're roaming in the country, they've developed over all of these years 2 different types of layers. So one layer, which is the closest to their skin, is the insulation layer. And on top of that are these wind hairs, or just these types of fibers that grow from them that allow them to be protected from the wind and the rain. These same 2 fibers show up in these sweaters. So I've been out in many different conditions in Iceland and been able to wear this sweater, and even if it got wet, I was still kept warm. One of the things though that people always talk about when it comes to this sweater, because it has the 2 fibers, is that it can feel a little bit itchy. As you can see that I'm wearing underneath my sweater another shirt, and that definitely helps me to not feel it at all. When I first got the sweater, yes, I did feel it a little bit, but I just didn't even notice it anymore. Maybe because I love the sweater so much, or maybe because it is kind of just one of those things that you have to get used to. I've heard of people saying that they wash their sweaters in conditioner to help with that. I can't speak for that, but I can say that you don't feel it all the time, at least not in my opinion. I also find it hilarious that all this time I've been telling people about how important it is to wear layers in Iceland because of the weather, and the sheep do it naturally. So, you know, just follow what the locals do, basically. And it's sad that I've been missing out on that joke all of this time, but the point is that using this sweater as a middle layer, so like I mentioned, having another layer underneath, and then having this as a middle layer, and then having a rain jacket, especially like in the summer or when it's just a little chillier, will definitely protect you. I've actually worn this sweater in much colder conditions and just had on a jacket, actually had on a thicker jacket, and I was really hot. So you can be for sure that you're gonna get lots of protection from the cold and the rain in these types of sweaters. So after the sheep have had their summer vacation, in the fall there's something called a réttir, and that is essentially when the sheep are all rounded up by their farmers, they're sorted into which farm they belong to, and then they are taken back home to the farms. At the farms they are sheared ethically. None of the sheep are hurt in the process of shearing them, and their wool is then taken and washed and sent to basically, it's bought in order to be made into yarn. And a company named Ístak's is the largest processor of Icelandic wool. I think they process something like 90% of the wool in Iceland. They take it and they also, through their own washing process, they sort it, they dye it, and they make it into yarn. So the specific yarn for the lopapeysa, the Icelandic sweater, like I mentioned, is unspun. It's pretty fragile. So that's another fascinating thing about unspun wool, specifically Icelandic wool, is that it's fragile and delicate to handle. And so when you're first using it, like, you have to learn how to use it as opposed to spun wool or spun yarn. But the great things that once you are using it and you've knitted with it, like the end result is a very strong, sturdy product. And I can speak for the sweaters that I've had, because this is where I've bought my sweaters, that my sweaters have lasted and I love them. And I've put them through some hard times for sure. So it's definitely not the case that the sweater themselves are fragile. Another part that makes the Icelandic sweater so unique is the design, of course, which I think is really beautiful, and it's based off of a yoke design, and it goes around, as you can see, like the chest area, the shoulders, in the back, and it's uninterrupted unless, of course, you have a zipper or buttons in the front, which then of course you've had to stop. But in essence, the pattern still goes, the same pattern is still going around, and you'll find it sometimes on the sleeves and then sometimes on the bottom of the sweater as well. What I love is that these designs, whether it's for kids or adults, have really been getting amazingly creative, especially with the colors over the years. And so for the next segment, which has to do with why I'm specifically in this awesome store filled with beautiful sweaters all around me, I'm gonna change into another Icelandic lopapeysa. Now we're on to the segment about why I'm specifically in the Hand Knitting Association of Iceland. And as you can see, this lovely sweater that I'm wearing is very Christmassy. I'm getting in the mood for it. And actually in Reykjavik, they've already put up the Christmas lights because they're just like, we need to bring some joy and happiness to everybody around, because it's been a really tough year, as many of you know and have been feeling as well. And come to find out, Helgadögg told me that this is a very popular Christmas sweater, and I can see why. The colors are beautiful. And once I put it on and saw myself in the mirror, I was like, yes, Christmas is on. I'm feeling it in my spirit. So I am on top of the fact that, of course, this is a great place to try on sweaters. There are some other reasons, at least in my opinion, why I feel that this is the best place to come and get your handmade, authentic Icelandic sweater. So as I mentioned earlier about the history of the Icelandic sweater, at one point tourists started buying the sweaters, which of course increased the demand for these sweaters, and lo and behold, there have been foreign productions of knockoff Icelandic sweaters, and they're not made from Icelandic wool. They're not handmade, they're made by machines, and they're basically just like mass shipped in to the country to, you know, stores that might be selling souvenirs and things like that. So you would end up finding a less expensive version, but of course you're not getting, like I mentioned, the authentic one that lasts longer and that you can really say, this is my handmade Icelandic sweater. And what I think was amazing that the Icelandic Hand Knitting Association did is that they applied to get the Icelandic sweater, or Íslensk lopapeysa, like that phrase, protected. And the sweater has to meet certain criteria in order for it to be labeled an Icelandic sweater. First off, it has to be a sweater made from Icelandic wool. It has to be handmade here in Iceland. It has to be made with virgin wool that's unspun. The pattern has to have circular knitted yoke, and it's allowed to have an opening in the front, but of course the pattern has to be like basically going around the shoulders and things like that. So a couple of years ago, the Icelandic Food and Veterinary Authority actually gave that protection to the Icelandic sweater, and I personally am very happy about that, just because I think it's so important to support local businesses which help the local economy here in Iceland. And also, I just think it's amazing that this is an association of individuals who are knitters. They do this in order to help their families, but also like this is a time-honored tradition that is being passed down and allows for this to continue to grow in the country, allows for more innovation, interesting ideas. There are, of course, modern takes on the Icelandic sweater, and it's just really nice to be able to see that there's a collective that is doing that, and the majority of the money from this shop goes to the knitters. So that in itself, to me, is just like amazing, and I found out about this when I first came to visit Iceland way back in 2013. So my first time in this store was in, I believe it was December of 2013, and I bought my first Icelandic sweater, and it was the highlight of the souvenirs that I bought, like many of the things that I brought back. Of course, the memories were really important, but I have this like physical thing to remind me of Iceland every winter before I moved here. And when I, ended up moving in 2016, I was just like, now I could have more access to go and get more sweaters, which you've seen in my other videos. And I love coming here to try these on. So that's just something to kind of know in terms of, like, for me, ethically, when it comes to buying clothing and local materials. And you can know to look for, in the tag, that you should see that the sweater says that it's made with 100% Icelandic wool, as well as if you're not sure about a sweater, just ask the shopkeeper if it is actually an Icelandic sweater and made from 100% wool. If they're not able to give you a good answer, I would skedaddle out of there. But, to be safe, the best bet, in my opinion, is to come here. There are many different varieties, and if you're in the country, of course, you can come into the store physically to try it on. They have sweaters for children, they have sweaters for adults, they sell yarn, they sell different types of sweaters as well, not just lopapeysas, gloves, hats. Like, it's just, there's so much here in order to choose from, and for me, it's like coming into the candy store. I don't have a sweet tooth, I have a lopapeysa tooth. Maybe. Is that a thing? I don't think so. But the whole point is that I really enjoy coming in here to try these types of things on, and also sharing with people when, I find something that I believe is valuable. And the cost will range depending on the type of sweater that you want. So within this store, you can find what are considered 1-ply, 2-ply, or 3-ply sweaters. And that's essentially regarding the thickness of the sweater. 1-ply will be quite thin and airy, which is nice, and then you have a kind of a medium and then more heavy. And the heavier one will definitely keep you nice and toasty, whereas maybe you just want one where you can like wear around the house and it's a little bit thinner, or just under like a light jacket or something. So lots of variety there. And what is something that's important to know about the cost in Iceland is that there is a mandatory 24% value added tax that is added within. So the price that you see is the price that you're getting, including the tax. If you're in the store, you can, and you're just visiting Iceland and you buy a sweater, you can get up to 14% of that value added tax back at the airport. But if you're ordering from the online shop, which probably many of you want to do, seeing how the holiday season is coming up, and there's a link to that in the description box, then that is the price that you'll see on the website. And like I mentioned, for me, mine have lasted, and I foresee them lasting for many years to come. I know people who've owned their sweaters for decades, and I considered it an investment in a really great sweater and a product and an Icelandic, memory and piece of the Icelandic identity that I really value. So in that case, it doesn't end up being a high price, in terms of for the long term. And when you see the web shop, you'll notice that maybe there's some sweaters or items here in the store that you see in the video that aren't currently on the web shop. Just know that they are continuously updating the web shop. So just as an FYI, because personally I didn't see the kids stuff on there, but when I asked Helga Dögg, she says that stuff is coming. So definitely keep an eye out for that. So as I was talking to Helga Dögg after filming, I'm just gonna jump back in here with a quick note. What's awesome is that if you see a sweater and you want a specific color or you want different length, they can actually customize it to your desires. So you can just contact them in regards to color, length, design, whatever you see in the store or online that is of interest to you. So I was actually not aware of that, and I'm very happy to know that, because even though I'm learning how to knit now, I think it would be nice to be able to get someone who professionally knows how to do it help me out with coming up with whatever colors and specifications that best fits, especially if someone has like really long arms or a longer torso. So that's just something to keep in mind, people. FYI, check out that link in the description box to contact them or to check out some of your options. So if you enjoyed learning about the Icelandic sweater, the history, what makes it unique, and about what I feel is the best place, the place that I absolutely recommend you come and get a sweater. Please give this video a thumbs up and definitely share it with other people that you think would be interested in learning about the sweater or have been wanting to know where they can get one, because I do, like I mentioned, believe it's important to help local businesses, and the web shop link is below, as well as through that link you can find where the shops are located. So there are 2 shop locations. There's one here on Skóla Vörðustígur and another one in Borgatún. Both of them really easily accessible, but the one I'm in is near Hallgrímskirkja Church. So just kind of keep that in mind. Easy to find the church, and straight down that street you'll definitely be able to find this store and come in and roam around and pick whatever to your heart's desire. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on more informative and entertaining videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.